All right. Welcome to another episode of the Leaving California podcast. We're here to explore the stories of individuals and families who are trying to make the decision of whether or not to leave California for greener pastures. I'm your host, Cherie Harrington, and I'm a real estate agent here in San Diego. And today we have a special guest with us, Jessica Galison, who's a real estate agent from Jacksonville, Florida. And Jessica's here to share her insights on the ups and downs and what it's like to make the move from the Golden State to Florida. Tell us the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things that we need to know so that our listeners can make an informed choice. Jessica actually just helped someone from our Leaving California Facebook group make the transition, and they absolutely raved about her. So I cannot thank you enough for that. It was super cool. So I'm excited to have you here. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much. I had such a fun time working with him, and I'm so excited to watch his family thrive in Florida. It's great.
And they're super happy too. I love that.
Yeah,
I love to hear that. So we were just talking before we hit record about the reason that I'm doing these podcasts is because a lot of people are either they're moving for a job relocation or to be closer to family, or they're moving because they're angry with the state of California, right? So when we kind of get ourselves into that state, we make decisions that aren't very smart for us sometimes. So I've had a lot of people that I know from the Leaving California Facebook group page, and just that I know personally, that have left the state. And two in particular, one moved to Florida, one moved to Arizona, and now they want to come back. So they were literally there maybe 3 months, and they're like, I don't like this, so I want to come back. So what we want to discuss with you is if you can just kind of inform us, like, what are the good things that you love about Jacksonville, Florida? What are some things that you need to be concerned about? And then, like, what are the ugly things that we as Californians, being as spoiled as we are here, might not think about before we make the move? So if we want to start, let's start talking about the good things. Like, what do you like about that area?
What do I love about Northeast Florida? So first, it's important that you know I grew up in South Florida, which weather-wise is drastically different from Northeast Florida.
Okay.
In South Florida, you have heat and humidity, and there's about 2 weeks in January when it's cold, and that's about it.
Okay.
There's
what
a
do you
lot.
consider cold?
So mid 40s is cold in South Florida.
Okay.
And that's literally 2 weeks. People bust out the leather and the fur, and they love it for that 2 weeks. Here in Northeast Florida, we get a really nice break from the heat from about November until March.
Okay.
So temperatures in the summer are very hot and very humid in Northeast Florida. I think it's actually hotter in Jacksonville and St. John's than it is in South Florida.
Okay.
And then the humidity with that is pretty significant. But then around Labor Day, the weather gets a little bit better. And then into November through March, it's, for me, it's cold in the 60s.
Okay.
But most people think it's beautiful that time of year. So we average at night in the mid 40s to mid 50s up to the 70s. That's normal through March.
And then so how hot does it get? You said it gets really hot. So how hot does it usually get in the summer?
100.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes, it definitely gets. And the humidity. Yes. Okay. So in the summer, I think from around late June through September, every day in the summer it rains sometime between 3 and 5 o'clock. And that rain is insane monsoon, lots of lightning, and it could last an hour, it could last 20 minutes, and then it's gone. And then it's very steamy.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So we, as Floridians, we plan to do things in the morning and then kind of hide in the house in the afternoon.
Good idea. Yeah, I've been caught in, it was in Miami years ago, but in some of those downpours while I was driving, I'm like, oh my God, how do people drive in this? It's crazy.
It literally comes out of nowhere, and it can be gone as fast as it comes too. It's
wow.
crazy.
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, cool. So I'm like, I won't be moving there, but all right. But it's like everything else, right? You get used to it, whatever your environment is. Like you said, you guys plan your day around that because you know that's going to happen. So
right. When you know it's going to rain around 3:00, you just, my kids always say, why does it rain in the summer? And I'm like, guys, we can go to the pool all morning. It's awesome.
yeah,
You go to the beach in the morning. You just do stuff in the morning.
right, right.
Other things there's a lot of nature in Florida. The ecosystem is beautiful. Where I live in Northeast Florida, we have lots of wildlife. Yesterday, I was standing in my cul-de-sac and there was a bald eagle flying over me.
That's cool.
That's amazing. And then we have manatees, and in my neighborhood, we have deer and wild turkeys, and that's super fun to watch it. Something I really love about living in Northeast Florida is the green spaces. I'm in a neighborhood in St. John's, Florida, where the green spaces have been made very important within the community. So we have these big master plan communities, but then we also have wooded areas that are protected, preserved land, so that'll always be there. And I think that's really special, and it's a really different thing that we get to enjoy is those trees year round.
Definitely. What about the alligators?
It's so funny. Everyone I talk to that moves to Florida, I think that maybe 60 or 70% of my business is families that that are relocating to Florida. And it's always a question, the alligators. Alligators and snakes. So the alligators are there. My big rule as someone who grew up in Florida is you don't swim in lakes and you don't swim in ponds, because that's where the alligators go.
Okay.
Swim in the ocean and you're safe. The biggest threat that alligators cause is when someone's feeding them. It's actually a federal offense to feed alligators. And if you are feeding them, that's when they become not afraid of humans.
Yeah.
And that's when they become a nuisance. When you have a nuisance alligator, the Fish and Wildlife Commission will come and take it away. They'll rehome it to somewhere safe. So for the most part, I don't think alligators are really concerning. And snakes, same thing. They're more afraid of us than we are of them.
Right. What kind of snakes do you guys have?
In Northeast Florida, the two snakes that are dangerous, we have water moccasins, which are a very dangerous snake, and we have pygmy rattlesnakes. Those are the only two dangerous snakes that I know of here. In the summertime, I sprinkle cayenne pepper around my doorways, and it keeps snakes away.
That's a great idea.
Burns their skin.
I have to do that, but that's a good idea.
Yes. And then we just make sure we keep our doors closed so that the snakes don't come in. And really, the only time of year that it's really a concern for snakes is in the summer when it's super hot. So we're not keeping our doors open anyways then.
Right, right. Okay, gotcha. Tell me about the housing costs there. I know I looked into moving to Florida. Oh my God, this was a long time ago, 25 years ago or whatever. And it was much, much cheaper than California at that time. But I feel like just looking at prices online, that there are some areas that have caught up almost to areas of California. And it feels like the prices have gone up, I guess, probably since COVID, since everybody started migrating there. How do you feel about the housing costs?
So it's definitely gone up in the last 5 years. I bought a home in Northeast Florida in 2019 after I relocated my family here. And yes, my equity has done beautiful things in that time.
Yeah.
But there is absolutely still affordable housing. I work in St. Johns County and Duval County. So Duval County is very different from St. Johns County. Duval median house price right now is about $290,000.
Wow.
So there's absolutely some affordable housing. And then in St. Johns County, that median price goes up to about $520,000.
Okay.
A lot of people who work in Jacksonville live in St. John's. It's about a 20 to 30-minute commute, depending on where you work and live.
Okay.
So that really makes a difference too. Also, something that's really important to know about Jacksonville is it is the largest city in the United States area-wise. It's 875 square miles large. It's huge.
Wow. Okay.
So there's a lot to see and a lot to do and a lot to really narrow down when you decide that you want to move to Northeast Florida. Jacksonville is massive.
And I can imagine, like you said, those two counties are wildly different. So I'm sure just all the little cities within there's a lot of diversity and
right. Florida is such a melting pot of people wherever you are in Florida. It's really hard to find native Floridians. It's almost like finding a unicorn. But there's a lot of transplants, and we all come from everywhere. There's a lot of Europeans, there's a lot of people from South America, there's a lot of people from the Caribbean, and then all over the United States.
And it seems like growing up anyway, like I grew up in New York. A lot of people would move to Florida from New York. Is that still the case? And okay. And I know there's been a huge influx of people from California since right around COVID time also. Okay.
Yes, I've worked with, I think last year, 35% of my business came from California.
Okay. From all over the state, or was there a certain area? Okay.
All over the state.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so talk to me about the price of homeowners insurance and car insurance, because here we're having insurance companies that are dropping people when their renewal dates are up, or they're, tripling or quadrupling their insurance rates because of the fires and just every other excuse they can use. But do you know what a typical house costs to insure there? And are you having the same issues there?
Yes, there is a bit of an insurance crisis in the state of Florida. 10% of all insurance claims in the US come out of the state of Florida, which is pretty reasonable considering there are hurricanes.
Right.
However, 75% of the lawsuits against insurance companies come from the state of Florida. That's a really big issue that's causing a lot of insurance companies to just back out.
And is it because there's something's happening and the insurance company's not covering what they said they were going to cover, or what do you think is the purpose of the law?
What happened in previous years, there was a lot of companies who were knocking on doors and getting homeowners to sign an assignment of benefits. And when they essentially sign over their rights to their insurance to this contractor, whatever they may, whether it's a roofer or something else, those roofers are now going after the insurance company for what could have been a $10,000 roof is ending up being a $75,000 roof, because they're fighting to get as much money as possible from the insurance companies. The state of Florida has stopped that and does not allow these assignment of benefits to happen anymore. However, it takes a really long time to recover from that. There is a lot of work being done at the state level to level out the homeowners insurance here, but it's not something that can be changed overnight. And in the meantime, a lot of insurance companies have backed out of the state of Florida. Costs for insurance are not terrible, but we do always kind of expect a letter to come in the mail. Hey, you need to do this or you'll lose coverage. So
like
Florida,
put a new roof on or whatever.
Yes.
Okay. That's happening here too. It's interesting.
Yes. So we have a lot of conversations with home sellers. When I list a house, I'm always having conversations about if your roof is insurable, if your water heater is insurable. Those are the big things that the insurance companies go after. And for buyers, you just want to make sure that you're getting a house that has an insurable roof, an insurable water heater, those type of things. You want to make sure that you get a 4-point and a wind mitt when you do your home inspection. That way it covers all your bases.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. What are some of the costs there that we might be able to compare here that we feel are high, like the cost of fuel, just some general cost of living things?
So when I was working with the person that you connected me with, I would send him pictures of the gas. When I was pumping gas, I would send him pictures because it was $2.90 one day.
God.
Typically, I think today I drove by, it was $3.35. So gas is a lot more reasonable than in California.
Definitely.
And property taxes are a lot better. I have a girlfriend who lives in Santa Rosa, and she called me one day and said, "What are the property taxes on this house?" She'd sent me a house. I said, "Oh, 5,000. She said, "How often?" I said, "For the year."
That would be nice. So how is it based there? Is it like here it's 1% of the purchase price. So if you purchase a home today at $1 million, it's $10,000 a year plus some little additional taxes possibly. How is yours assessed or priced?
Property taxes are based on a millage, so it's 0.1%. So think of it like $1 for every $1,000 you spend.
Of your purchase price or of what
of
it's
your purchase price, yes.
Okay.
So for a house, let's say you spend $350,000 on a house, you can expect your property taxes to be around 3.5 to 5,000, depending on whether you live in a master plan community or not.
Okay. And then the master plan communities, I'm assuming you probably have extra fees like we do here on top of the HOAs. Like ours is called Melrose, so it's an extra tax depending on when the house was built. Is there an extra tax like that?
So some communities there's an HOA, and some communities there's something called a CDD. That's the community district development, and it's bonds that that the developers have taken out on building infrastructure, and they just kind of pass those on to the homeowners.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, same exact thing, just a different name. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. What are some other things that, so if somebody were going to move there from here, like what would be your biggest selling point for somebody to leave California to move to Florida?
The people that I've worked with in the past moving from California, one of the biggest draws is the schools. St. Johns County is ranked as the #1 schools in the state of Florida, and that is pretty consistent.
Okay.
Now, I will caution with that, because the schools in St. Johns County are so highly rated based on test scores, the amount of people moving to St. John's is pretty big. We're growing at about 5% a year.
Okay.
That's a huge number.
Yeah.
And the infrastructure comes after the homes come. So we have a ton of new development, a ton of new construction houses. We also are catching up on the growth that's happened. In St. Johns County, they have planned 19 schools in 20 years. Wow. So almost every single year, they're opening at least one school. I know for the next school year, they're opening 2. And generally, it's either one high school or one academy, which is a K-8.
And then is that bringing about traffic issues?
A little bit.
Okay.
When I think of traffic, I think of California as like, it could take you an hour to drive something that would take 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like you guys think in time, not in miles, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So, realistically, unless you're driving in rush hour traffic, you can get just about anywhere in Northeast Florida in 20 or 30 minutes.
Okay. That sounds great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
When we first moved here, that was the joke. I moved here first, and then my husband moved. And when he came up, he was like, well, how far is that? I said, everything's 20 minutes. It's fine.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How are Californians perceived there? So like if you're in a neighborhood and your neighbor moves in, and it might be different for you because you're a real estate agent, but somebody's like, hey, I've just moved here from California. Like, what do people think?
So it's definitely a red state. Northeast Florida is certainly leaning on the red side. There are some predominantly blue areas in the state of Florida. South Florida, Palm Beach, Broward, and Dade County are usually always blue states, blue counties.
Okay.
Up in Northeast Florida, it's definitely a more conservative feel. I think that for the most part, it's very welcoming. The families that I've helped move here have felt very comfortable, and I've only heard really good things.
Good.
There are, I think you see it in all the states where people are moving there. Same in Texas, where people say, oh, you move here, make sure you don't vote the way you did in California.
Yeah.
It would take a really long time to get that way. But at the same time, there is a reason that people are moving to Florida. It's different.
Right.
Yeah. I think that for the most part, people are treated nicely and reasonably and fairly. I haven't seen anything crazy.
Okay.
It's definitely a bit of a culture shock for some people. In the state of Florida, you can carry a gun without a concealed permit. It's just a different place.
That's what I was going to ask you. What are some of the things that people from California might move there and they're like, whoa, what's this? Or something like that, or they might be excited that you can carry a gun without a concealed carry. But just different things. What are some things that you can think of that might be surprising?
Some of the biggest things that people are surprised by is that you can do things year round in Florida. I mean, I know in California it's similar, but for instance, my kids play sports year round here.
Yeah.
People in Northern California don't have that luxury, I'm sure, or if you live in the mountains. But that's a really big one. And going to the beach year round, it's very different, the beach here, than it is on the Pacific side. It's warmer water, and I think there's a lot more enjoyment of the beach on the East Coast than there is on the West Coast.
I do love Florida ocean water. It's beautiful and it's warm, and it's very cold here. So I don't even remember the last time I went in the water here. It's been a long time, but it's very cold. Any like ugly things that people might find out once they get there that you can think of?
Ugly. So there's hurricanes.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Tell me about. So you've been there your whole life, so you're probably not scared, right? You're just like, oh, it's another one. Leave or don't leave, or is it still kind of scary when it happens?
It's definitely a little scary if you know it's coming right at you.
Yeah.
I went through the eye of a storm once in my 20s. We had a storm come through. It was expected to be a Category 1. It ended up being a Cat 3. And watching that eye wall come at you is a pretty intense and scary feeling.
Yeah.
However, there's something different about Northeast Florida. The way that the state is shaped, there's a little bit of a curve. And the way that the jet stream runs, people in Northeast Florida don't know about hurricanes the way that I know about hurricanes, having grown up in South Florida.
Okay.
They don't hit here the way that they hit down south.
Okay. Gotcha. Like Miami area.
Right. They sort of travel up the coast. And by the time the storms get to this area, they've slowed down a lot. It's more of a rain event than it is a wind event. And the wind is really the more dangerous thing.
Okay. Gotcha. Awesome. So this is all really good. Thank you. I appreciate it. So before we wrap up, do you have any final tips or words of wisdom for our listeners considering making a move that way?
If you're thinking about Florida, I am always open to help. Florida is a really, really big state, and there's a lot of options. I really strongly suggest taking your time, visiting, doing a lot of research, because every area of Florida has its differences and its merits and its not so greats. And because the state is growing population wise so quickly, I really do think it's so important to take your time and really figure out what could be the right place for you, whether it's Northeast Florida or Tampa or wherever. And I'm always willing to help to narrow that focus for you, because I've been in the state for so long.
And you did a really good job with that with our client that went out there. And I appreciate that, because I know he was looking at a couple of different areas. So it is so important to do your homework. And I would say too, if you can afford it, stay for an extended period of time and really experience what the area is like, and make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into before you make the move. And I tell my people here that are thinking about selling and leaving, like, same thing. If you can go there for a couple months, do it, like in the worst part of the year that you can imagine, right? For some people that might be hurricane season, or for some people it might be just in the heat of the summer. And then I think too, like, we think about moving out of state every once in a while. Like, I don't think I'd sell my house here, because it's very difficult to get back into California real estate once you've left. And so if you can afford to keep your house or to rent it out before you make the move, at least you'll have somewhere to come back to if you don't like where you've chosen, whatever state it is, to go. So I think that's super important.
Most of the people that I've worked with have chosen to rent for a year before they purchase. And I think that that's a really smart way to go.
Yeah.
It just helps you to narrow your focus and figure out, because Florida, again, is such a big state like California, there's so many different options.
And like, yes, exactly what you just said. It's so different, even within the area that you live in. It's very different.
Yeah.
So I can imagine like all the different pieces. I've been to Florida several times, and every part I've been to has been completely different. So I think people just say, you know, I'm mad, I'm moving to Florida. You can't just move to Florida. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. So this was super helpful. What's the best way for people to reach you if they're interested in making the move?
You can shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram. You can call me or text me. My cell number is 561-706-4918. And you can shoot me an email as well. I'll find you no matter what. Send a homing pigeon if you want.
There you go. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this with us today. And thanks for being such an incredible resource for me. It's so nice for me to have all of you guys around the country that I know, like, and trust, that I can send my clients to, and I know they're going to be taken care of. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
I love to be here for you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Take care.